All right, so that is Ghostrunner 2, everybody. And I think that was a very, very worthwhile sequel to the original Ghostrunner, which was a very kind of B-level game in that it was like not very high budget. It was effectively an indie game. And 3D Realms, I believe, published it, who are the publisher who originally made things like Duke Nukem and stuff before Gearbox bought it. Thanks, Randy. You suck. You're terrible. You're the worst, and you should sell everything and leave. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of Randy Pitchford. Anyways, 3D Realms though published this game, and it really expands on a lot of the gameplay concepts of the original one. It really makes the whole original game seem like a alpha build of what would eventually become this, and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. It's another one that, like, oh, this is on my game of the year list. I don't know, like that was probably the most exciting, like, what, 18 hours? I'm saying 18 hours again, about the same length as Spider-Man. So it's not like, okay, well, it's a straightforward just action game that's super fast, it's linear, and then it's over, so it's nothing as far as Spider-Man's concerned. I'm like, well, I mean, there's less side content around it, but main story-wise, it was about the same length, I gather. Granted, again, like with this game, especially, a lot of it is how often are you dying? How quickly are you grasping the encounters? How often are you thinking of a good plan, or 5 good plans, and then varying between them depending on which one you're feeling on that given run? And then how long does it take you to execute? Because that's what the game is. Just like, again, like Hotline Miami. And actually, who was it? It was Racevic made a really good video on a Hotline Miami like game that I actually would like to reference here, because I really kind of want to check it out at some point. I want to see if it's on my Steam wish list. I want to see if I can get it on sale. Otso, OTXO, and it looks really good. So that's another kind of similar concept game where it's your one-hit kill, the enemies are one-hit kill, and you just need to get through a very short segment before you have another little segment to get through. The difference is, in Ghostrunner, there are segments where the challenge is not combat, it is just traversal. There are segments in Ghostrunner in which the challenge that you're getting through, that is that short little snippet of gameplay, is traversal and not combat. So it doesn't involve you killing anyone else, but involves you getting through the area without dying, which, if you're going to marry the Hotline Miami structure with Mirror's Edge like gameplay, I guess, to an extent, even though this is more like Titanfall than it's like Mirror's Edge. Like Mirror's Edge, while it's, hey, you're running around a city and it's mostly about parkour, it's like, well, yeah, but I don't think you're fighting any less in this game than you are in Titanfall 2. You know, because there's platforming segments in Titanfall 2 as well, right? And there's parts of that game where you're not shooting, just instead of guns, you have a sword and 3 abilities, which I think is a reasonable amount of abilities. I think they were all fun to use. I found the shadow wasn't very useful until it started becoming very useful in specific situations. So, I mean, that one, I guess you could have taken or lost the shadow ability and maybe rearranged a couple obstacles to just make it so that you don't need it, and the game wouldn't have changed all that much. But I think both the force push that you have and the shuriken are awesome, and they have a lot of uses, but neither of them are overpowered, and it I think has just really incredible combat. This kind of seems like it takes the Mirror's Edge Titanfall 2 / Hotline Miami stew and throws a little bit of Doom Eternal in there, and I think it's to really good effect, because I always thought the really cool thing about the acrobatics in Doom Eternal, with, actually, I think if you go on the party chat, like Nerdy Neo's podcast, I'm talking to Melee Games about that, because he really doesn't like Doom Eternal. He doesn't think it's Doom because of the acrobatic abilities, and I see the acrobatic abilities as them taking the 2D Doom gameplay of keep moving, keep shooting, switch weapons all the time, prioritize different weapons for different enemies, because each weapon is applied effectively differently. and takes that and moves it with it throws a Z axis in there, you know? So it's like now all of a sudden you're doing that not just on one level, but up a bunch of different levels. And the only way for you to have it so that you're fighting on multiple Z axis positions, or I guess Y axis? Yeah, because Z would be forward and back, right? X is side to side, Y is up and down, Z is forward and back. So I guess, I mean, I guess there wasn't a lot of Y-axis stuff in the original Doom games. There was, but for the most part, you're like, we didn't have mouse aim back then, so you're moving around playing keyboard with the space bar to open doors, and control was shoot, and you shoot with your right thumb. It was a very, very different kind of thing. Or maybe actually left thumb and maybe all hands down there, and then yeah, you'd have the other control, so you could also shoot with your left pinky. I don't know, I haven't played Doom like that in a very long time. That might be a fun thing to try. I don't think I'd like it very much because I love playing GZ Doom. GZ Doom now is incredible, and if you go back to it, it's just playing Doom is fantastic. But playing Ghostrunner feels kind of similar to Doom Eternal in the sense that it's constant movement combat in which you have different threats of varying severities that are positioned differently in each encounter, and it's not the enemies themselves, but their positioning and the amount of them, their loadouts, you could say, their teams. The team of enemies that is selected for any given encounter, how they're grouped, and where they're positioned totally changes every combat encounter in this game, to the point that you could make an infinite amount of Ghostrunner levels, and I don't think it would ever not be fun. Similarly, you know, they had the other game that we played on this stream, Super Mario Brothers Wonder. That there was this game called Super Mario Maker that is basically that idea. It's like, hey, the idea of getting from one end of a Mario, to the other end of a Mario level successfully is lots of fun. It has a very high skill ceiling, and there's kind of no limit to what we can do with it. Let's just let other people make their own levels and see what comes of it. And there was a lot of crazy stuff that came out of Mario Maker. And I think Ghostrunner is a 3D concept that would function similarly in that the enemies, where you position, how you design the actual level itself, and where you place each element, even if fundamentally you have now wingsuit, which, god, oh man, I wish the wingsuit was in more of the game. It doesn't change. The wingsuit does not change Ghostrunner nearly as much as the wingsuit changes Spider-Man. That I wasn't expecting, because I was like, oh, this actually fits really well. The elements of things like a grapple point, a wall to run on, a vent that you can use to boost up, vents that shoot you across, you know, all of those things coming together to create the scenario that you're dealing with makes there be an infinite number of ways you can vary that gameplay by using the same tools. But actually, Mauler in the if you watch on this channel, actually the reaction to Mauler fighting against Owl in Sekiro, Mauler was talking about that as well in the context of Sekiro being a more viable way for From Software to take their gameplay into an open world than Elden Ring, or like the Dark Souls formula, basically, which was Elden Ring. Elden Ring was Dark Souls open world. It was less Bloodborne open world or Sekiro open world than it was Dark Souls open world. And I think that he's right, because the Sekiro gameplay is similar to this in the way it's structured, where it's just there's an environment, there's enemy types, they synergize in interesting ways. You have a fixed amount of abilities that are very, very useful. Go nuts. We can make it as big as we want and still keep it very high quality, because it's the old Halo saying, the 30 seconds of fun deal. Ghostrunner has a very solid 30 seconds of fun. And it's just run, jump, grapple, wall run, dash, air dash in slow motion. The air dashing gives you a slow motion kind of bullet time thing, so that's a big element of it. Dashing, not infinitely because you have a stamina bar, but dashing repeatedly on the ground and dashing once in the air, and having that dash be very specific, because you only have one in the air. You can't just keep dashing around in the air, which I kept forgetting, to be honest, because you can in Cyberpunk. But you have to target that dash, and because of the one-hit kill nature, that dash can easily result in your failure. So it's a blessing and a curse, and you have to actually kind of figure out what you're doing. And I click with this kind of game very well, which is why I got through Ghostrunner 2 and how many days was it Saturday? This game came out on Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday. In 3 days, I got through the entire game. And Ghostrunner is one of those games where plenty of people are like, oh man, like, yeah, Ghostrunner, that game's impossible. You're never getting through Ghostrunner. It's like insane. And I'm just like, well, I mean, I don't know though. If you click with it, it's not. Because I don't know if you guys saw how quickly I was playing, but I perceived a difference in how fast I was moving and how fast I was thinking in this game versus many other first-person shooters which I play. And it's just because of the simplicity of the elements that you have to deal with in Ghostrunner. There's enough of them that you have to think about them, but they all make sense in a way that you can think about a bunch of them at the same time. And that every time you figure like, okay, this enemy's up here, this enemy's down here, this one's over here, this one's over there. Should I go right first and then boost up here and wingsuit over to the wall and then run along the wall and slash that guy and then use the wingsuit again to draft up to guys on the other side? Should I go around linearly? Should I go one way and then the other? And even doing that in the same encounter kind of changes the encounter, and you can choose when to do it. So it's almost like in one room with 10 enemies, there's tons of gameplay flexibility in just that one encounter. It's 7 different levels that have been created at the same time because they're very different if you move through them differently. And because it's like, hey, you're at one end of the room, it's a big open room with a bunch of obstacles in it. There's not a single path. It's not just, okay, I can go right or I can go left. I can go through this frontwards or backwards. It's a big loop and I always end up here. It's like, no, it's a jungle gym. It's an obstacle course that you enter. And there's not an exit of, because there's just other people running around the obstacle course that you have to slice in half with your katana. That's Ghostrunner 2, baby. You also have a motorcycle for a significant portion of this game. I haven't even talked about the motorcycle in the game, because the motorcycle starts out really cool, gets insane, and then starts getting just out of its mind wild. And I think I can make that make sense. So the first time you get the motorcycle in Ghostrunner 2, it's almost like Wipeout. If you've ever played the game on the PlayStation console, there's a Psygnosis game called Wipeout, then Wipeout XL, Wipeout 3, I believe, and Wipeout Fusion was on PSP, I think. I think there was one called Wipeout Fusion. Maybe I'm mixing it up with Metroid. Anyways, but Wipeout HD was the PS3 one. I believe that's the last one they made, although they did have a port of that for PSVR, and that's actually really good as well. Or I think, yeah, you can play it on PS4 as well. So Wipeout HD. If you have a PS4 or 5, strongly recommend playing it. It's a really, really good racing game. It kind of felt like that, in that you've got a very straight track that's winding and spinning in a whole couple different ways and stuff, and you have to dodge all these obstacles and figure out the best way through it. You're not doing the combat, actually is different. I mean, it's there, but it's different than it is in Wipeout. Because Wipeout, it's actually kind of like Mario Kart, where you pick up an item and then you can use it and keep going. Think of it as the most intense kart racer that has a soundtrack not too dissimilar from this. Pretty much the whole time in Wipeout games. Anyways, and I thought it was really cool. It was the one that I played in the demo. I don't know if the demo's still available, but if it is, the end of the demo, if you can get through the parkour segment, ninja segment, the motorcycle segment is at the end of that. And then it ends with you going out into the big world. Not an open world exactly in video game sense, but the open world of that game, because Dharma is that big tower that you are in. And the whole first game takes place on just levels of the tower. It's like a Judge Dredd mega city times 10. It's just huge. This giant building that has all this stuff in it. You get out into the outside world, and it does become a more open-ended, go where you want, tackle these 3 towers kind of setup. And the music totally changes. It becomes very sort of 28 Days Later, like not black metal, sorry. Yeah, black metal is black metal. I keep on mixing up black metal and doom metal. But anyways, a band called Godspeed You Black Emperor has a great song called East Hastings, I want to say. That's in 28 Days Later. It's the song that plays at the end when Cillian Murphy is like going on a rampage. It's a great song. But a lot of the music in the open world here kind of sounds like that. So I'm thinking They probably like 28 Days Later a lot. You are fighting zombies effectively at this point in the game. So, you know, that made sense to me. I did think it dragged the energy down a bit too much. I think for Ghostrunner, they should maybe keep it a little more fast-paced. That's a taste thing. I just think that the EDM ultra fast, because you're still moving fast in the combat and everything, so it's not like you're slowing down. It's just the music's all going like boom, 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 like that kind of stuff, right? It's a different vibe. But yeah, you can speed around on this motorcycle. There's segments in which you have a weapon, in which, because I use the motorcycle with my controller, you press B to throw yourself off the motorcycle. Like you launch yourself into the air and your motorcycle keeps going as fast as it was. And you have a little window of time where you can then grapple to your motorcycle and pull yourself right down to it. And you'll have to do things like send the motorcycle through these laser beams while you jump over it and then grapple down to your motorcycle. And I was just like, man, this is awesome. And it's a motorcycle that I can't just move around. The physics on it aren't perfect for things like navigating around small obstacles, and out in the wasteland there is a fair amount of that. So I think the motorcycle physics in Cyberpunk are a little more realistic in the sense it's still very arcadey, don't get me wrong, in Cyberpunk, but they feel a little more grounded, whereas this bike feels a little floatier, but it's crazy fast and it handles unbelievably. It's just like it goes exactly where you want it to at any given time. And the problem is sometimes there'll be small obstacles that it sticks on and stuff and doesn't just like blast through them or anything. I think they could tighten up the motorcycle stuff a little bit. You do have a gun on it and you can slash your sword. Both of them do really crazy damage. So yeah, it's like a car combat game as well for a bit. And it's got Bethesda style like dialogue, or I guess more like Far Cry style, or you know, the Bethesda light, like you don't have any choice and it's not an RPG at all, but it's like, hey, zooms in on the main character and or the character who you're speaking to, and they look directly at the camera and talk to you as if it's you know what I mean? Like, and you can't move around, it's just static angle. Whereas Half-Life style would be the characters start talking to you as if the person is you, like they'll look at you and stuff, but you can move around. And if it's done well, or at least I mean better than they could have done it in 1997 for Half-Life, because Half-Life, basically the sequence goes on and you can essentially go anywhere you want, you know, and they won't like track your head or anything like that. But now, I mean, that's all you'd have to do is just have the characters kind of look at your character, maybe have them move around in a couple patterns where they do things like lean up against a desk if they get over there, but they react to sort of where you're moving. Things like that are kind of cool to do. But the Bethesda style that's used in everything, I guess, except for Fallout 4, is just straight angle on, text and dialogue. And that's what they're like in this game, and that's fine. But I think they're really kind of laying the groundwork that if they do, and I hope they do, make Ghostrunner 3, that it could be a really sort of crazy thing out in the wasteland. I hope that they bump up the energy level of the music, and if they design cool places to explore out in the wasteland and do things like vary the visuals, like they did a lot of neat stuff with time of day in it, for like, because it's the motorcycle sequences, one's during the day and one's at night, and that makes the wasteland look very, very different as you're flying through it at ultra fast speed. Maybe there can be a whole area of America, or wherever they are, I'm assuming they're in America, where it's I mean, I guess this game I think is made in Poland though, so I don't know, maybe Europe. There's an area of wherever this game takes place that is more built up and green and kind of Horizon Zero Dawn-ish, where like they didn't even realize that there were plants all the way out here because no one ventures that far out into the wasteland. There's been like a nuclear holocaust and stuff, but he's like entirely synthetic at this point. So his brain is a real human's brain. He did have a past, he did have a human life and memories, but he's effectively all robot, body-wise at least. Yeah, Ghostrunner 2. Also a very good game that came out this year, man. 2023, pretty solid overall.